Hi everyone, and welcome to Dungeons and Die Rolls. On today's episode, I'm going to be reviewing legendary Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So I just got back this week from Gen Con 2017, the 50th anniversary. It was an awesome con. I played a lot of great games. I bought a lot of great games. So what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to be recording some reviews of the games that aren't available for retail yet, in the hopes that these will be of help to people when they hit shelves and people want to know if they're any good or not. And they'll have my opinion, which is clearly the only thing that counts. So, I'm a huge Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan, and so there was a lot of excitement and some trepidation when Upper Deck announced this game, and I'll talk about reasons for both of those things in a minute. Some background for people who are not familiar with the legendary series of games. The legendary series comes in two lines. The original Legendary was a Marvel-themed game, and it's a semi-cooperative game. And you'll notice my face when I say semi-cooperative, because for me, that idea just doesn't work, personally. Different schools of thought exist on this. Some people like it, but for me, the idea that all of the players can lose to the game, so they have to work together in order to win in the first place, but then they're expected at some point to choose to make decisions that screw over the other players just enough to make me have the most points, but not enough to make us not win. It just doesn't work to me. It doesn't make sense. So every time that I've played Legendary with different gaming groups across the country, I've always ended up just ignoring the points and playing it straight cooperative, we win or we don't, or just sort of counting the points as an afterthought, where yes, we won, hey, who killed the most guys, who did the best. I've never played with anyone who actually chose to make a decision that hurt the group as a whole. But anyway, that was the original Legendary. After that came out, they started the Legendary Encounters line, and that started with Alien. And the Legendary Encounters line is fully cooperative, and they were really fun because they incorporate specific cards and a deck construction for the game's AI that incorporates a story element. So, in the example of Alien, you have 3 scenarios you're playing through, and you can make those scenarios so that you are literally playing through the storyline and the different scenes of any of the Alien movies. Or, of course, you can mix and match them if you want to create... I'm gesticulating with one hand because I'm holding the box, and that'd be weird. You can mix and match them to create your own new storyline, whatever you like. And that was fun. I loved Legendary Alien, still played a lot. Predator worked the same way. They made a Firefly in that Encounters line, which I didn't like as much, but that's because of some new mechanisms they put in there. So they have those two lines of games. They have the Legendary games that are supposed to be semi-cooperative with one winner, and those are the Marvel and the Marvel Villain, and I believe the Big Trouble in Little China game is a Legendary game. I have never actually looked at it. I don't know anyone who's owned it. But then the Legendary Encounters line, fully cooperative, has nice storylines integrated into the gameplay, and that was Alien and Predator and Firefly. Then they announced Buffy, and they said it's a Legendary game. And fans across the world, or at least fans on Board Game Geek, shrieked in outrage, because to have a Buffy game without that cooperative storyline just is weird. And the idea that you have Buffy and Xander and Willow are somehow working against each other to get one up on each other, it it's weird. And I don't understand why they made that decision, unless it was just that they felt they needed to have more games in the Legendary series to balance out the number in the Encounter series. I read a post from one of the developers where they tried to justify it, and they were talking about characters like Spike, really just Spike, who was working with the rest of the Scoobies, but they had ulterior motives, and really that's just Spike. And really it always ended up with everyone was working together in all of the story arcs. So it is a big disappointment right out of the box that the game was Legendary and not Encounters. I was on the fence as to whether or not I was going to buy this game, but in the end, it was Buffy. It was not the Buffy board game that came out last year, so I kind of had to. I had to give it a try, because I do like the Legendary system. So, my first impressions when I open up the box are pretty good. One of the low points of all the Legendary games has always been the artwork, and I think the best that I could rate any of the art from a Legendary game is decent, and it goes all the way down to Mr. Fantastic looking like he was drawn with crayons, to here's Simon from Firefly that appears to have been modeled after a potato. I was going to show an example of Mr. Fantastic too, but I can't find it, and it's possible that I hated that set so badly that I just tossed it. I can't find the Fantastic Four expansion. But, so anyhow, the artwork has always been a low point, and I was apprehensive about that, but all the cards in Buffy are screen caps. Actual pictures from the show. Awesome. It makes me so happy that they're not mangling my beloved Buffy characters in the game. You might have noticed they're also they're titled with generally quotations from the show. A couple of them, like Prophecy Girl, is the name of an episode, but generally they're quotations pertaining to the characters. Some of them are more appropriate than others. There's a Riley card that's Captain Cardboard, and there's a Cordelia card that's Lack of Tact. And those are on the goofy side to me. Like, I don't see how that's describing something that is either helping their teammates in combat or inspiring them in a charismatic way. So, for me, some of the card titles are not good, and they're kind of thrown in there to say, hey, we know these quotes about the characters from the show, instead of we're actually trying to make the card feel like it's playing some role in the battle that you're... Apparently this is how you battle. In the battle that you're playing through during the card game. But that's really incidental. So I'm going to give a rundown of the Legendary gameplay for people who haven't played it before. This is not intended to be a full rules explanation. Do not take this in lieu of learning how to play the game properly, but it'll give you an idea of how you play if you haven't played one of these games before. So here's what Buffy the Vampire Slayer looks like on the table. This is not a complete setup. A few of these places should be much larger decks, but I wasn't going to go through shuffling and combining all these decks just for the sake of example. But you've got it's a deck building game, so you have a hero deck that has 5 different characters from the show in it, and that's going to be randomly drawn out into this buy area here. Now you've got 2 resources that you use in the game, and you start with these starting cards in your deck, Watchers and Initiative Soldiers, and one resource is the Gold Star, which is what you use to pay the cost of new cards to purchase them into your deck. The other resource is, I forgot the technical name, combat points, and you use that to defeat the villains that are going to be coming out of the villain deck and progressing across the table here. Now, the ultimate goal of the game is you choose a big bad that you need to beat, and that big bad is trying to pull off a specific scheme. And so that combination of big bad and scheme is what's primarily working against you. In the villain deck, you're going to get creatures. Hey, it's a Turok-Han Ubervamp. And they have a combat value in their lower right, which shows how much you need to generate from cards played on your turn in order to beat them. And they come off the table. They technically go into a victory pile, where at the end of the game you earn victory points. Here we go, I'm trying to center in the camera. You earn victory points for each card in your victory pile. Now, when you're playing cards on your turn, they're going to have, aside from those two resources, a lot of them, the ones that you buy, are going to have card text on them. And that'll do things like draw a card, look at the top card of your deck, KO something to take it out of your deck from the discard pile, things like that. A lot of the cards will have things like this, where there's card text preceded by a symbol. And that means that you need to have played a card of that color, or that affiliation, as it may be. But a card with that icon has to have been played earlier in your turn. So you have to have played it before you play this card if you want to get that specific bit of card text. So there's a little bit of strategy involved in the order that you play your cards, especially when you get into things where you have effects that allow you to draw more cards, because you want to try to draw more cards if you can, so you have a better chance of playing the card type that will allow this other card in your hand to trigger when it goes. So there's some good thought involved in the strategy of your card playing. Now, there's a couple of mechanisms that are unique to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and those are, over here, there are courage tokens. And each player starts with one courage token, and there are a few ways that they can be gained during the game. And you can spend a courage token on any of your turns. You can spend as many courage tokens as you like on any of your turns. And each courage token counts as an additional recruitment or combat point as you like. So that's a I like that. I wish, and maybe this is just that we haven't mastered it yet, I wish they were a little easier to get, but I like the way that that provides some versatility to your turn. The other new mechanism is over here. There's a light and dark track. As the token moves lower down on the dark track, if it should have to move dark and it's already at the bottom, it bumps back up to 1, but it triggers a terrible ability on the big bad's card. It's going to hurt all of the players. There are also some villain cards and even some hero cards that may have additional abilities when the track is towards the dark side. Conversely, as you move towards the light side of the track, if you reach the top and you would go up, you bump back to light 1 and you gain another one of those courage tokens. So that's the only generic way to gain the courage tokens. There are a fair number of hero cards that give you one, but that's the only guaranteed way. And again, there are characters you can see here on Angel's card, if you can see it, that he has a light ability, so that part of his card text will only resolve when the tracker is on the light side. Up here are wounds that enemies may cause you to take into your deck. Those are just, they take up space in your hand, so they prevent you from doing things on your turn. And lastly, there are bystanders. And bystanders are innocent civilians that might get captured by the villains, and they're worth additional victory points if you defeat the villain that has a bystander. You get the villain and the bystander underneath in your victory pile. The other nice thing about this is, like the Dark City expansion from Marvel, all of the bystanders have special effects. So I like that they're not just random person. Herbert the Pig gives you a courage token when you rescue him, and Joyce Summers makes the light track advance. So I think that's cool. There's a good number of schemes. There's everything from over there is Twilight Terror, that's all about pushing the dark track and taking away your courage. There's Opening the Hellmouth. There's Converting to Evil, where you put one of the characters into the villain deck, and they function as villains, so that's great for... You can add Angel to Angelus or to the Master. You can have Faith in there working with the Mayor. So that's pretty cool. There's a decent assortment of villain groups. It doesn't matter for these purposes, but if you're familiar with Legendary, then there are both the Henchman villains, which are all the same within their stack, and then there are also villain groups, which have different cards inside of them. So there are demon villains and Glory's minions and minions of the First and all that kind of stuff. So that was Legendary Buffy. Overall, I like the game more than I was afraid I might. It does have a pretty good amount of theme in the character cards, in the different scheme twists. You know, they're made to be generic so that you use any villain with them, but for what they're doing, opening the Hellmouth, the Twilight Terror, you know, they feel pretty thematic, and you can choose to make some pairings between the big bad and the scheme that really work together to sort of evoke the feeling of some of the episodes from the show. I do like the way the light-dark track works, I think. I've played 3 games of this so far, so I think I like the way that works. There are some characters, heroes that you buy, that want the track to be dark, and they have abilities that trigger off of that, whereas there are some that want it to be light, and they trigger off of that. The dark ones are generally more powerful, because it's more dangerous to live in the dark, because you're closer to the big bad effects going off, and a lot of the schemes rely on dropping on the dark track, triggering the dark track. So but that's a neat balance, and finding ways to bump it back up towards the light, to replenish your courage tokens, those are all good strategic parts of the game. Obviously, I am regretful that it's not an encounters game, but ultimately, I'm enjoying it. The fact that it's Buffy and the fact that they do have that amount of theme from the show in there is helping to pull it through and redeem it for me. So far, it's pretty difficult. Like I said, I've played 3 games. We won one of them and badly lost the other 2. So, and we used different combinations each time of villain and scheme twist. Villain and scheme. So, might have to see if some of them seem easier than others to get into it a little bit. And it might be the thing that you want to start strategically choosing what heroes are going to be in the deck for some of the more difficult villains or schemes. But overall, I think it's a very solid choice for a cooperative Buffy experience. I could not take the old cooperative board game from the 90s. I played that, and too outdated for me, and too many weird random die roll parts. So I couldn't enjoy that, and I definitely couldn't enjoy the game that came out last year that's like more like a party game than an interesting board game to me. So right now this is doing it for me for having a Buffy game, and We'll see. I'd be surprised if we didn't start seeing fan releases of encounter-style storyline cards to use with this and make it more scenario-driven. That'd be cool. But I hope that this review helped you to get an opinion of what the game is like and see if you'd like to buy it or play it with someone else. Please like and subscribe to my channel. I'll be releasing more reviews of Gen Con material in the next couple of weeks. And if you have any questions about the game or things that you'd like me to do in my videos, comment and I'll get back to you. And have a great day.